Okay, so let me set the scene. I was in Barcelona, fourth trip to the city, and I was on a mission. I was going to find paella for one. I know, for a lot of people, that probably sounds rather trivial. But for me, and my love for Spanish food, and specifically paella, um, being a solo traveler became a little bit difficult. So here we are. I wanted to sit at a table by the water and eat a proper paella by myself, just me. Every single paella restaurant I walked into told me the same thing. Sorry, not possible. Paella is for two people minimum. Come back with a friend or a boyfriend, and then they would flirt, whatever. And I would just be like, no, please. So, that fourth trip, though, specifically, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this happen no matter what. And in going to a bunch of places, I actually had a friend of mine that suggested a specific restaurant. And they're like, we don't even know if they will allow paella for one. But it took me those four trips for me to actually learn a little bit more Spanish, gain a little bit more charm, and, finally make it happen. And honestly, that story tells you everything that you need to know about what solo travel is actually like. You are negotiating your way through every single situation. You're having to make decisions on your own. You're having to decide how much something is worth it or not worth it. If you don't know me already, and if you're new to this channel, welcome to Comfort's Compass. I am Comfort, and this channel is all about travel, food, and living well in the world. Today, we're talking about something a little bit different, not a destination, a mindset, and a few things I really, truly wish someone would have told me before my first solo trip. So, first things first, the freedom of solo travel is so real. I need you to know that. There is genuinely nothing like walking up in a new city and knowing that the entire day is yours. You want to spend 3 hours in one museum? Spend 3 hours in one museum. If you want to go to the beach, go to the beach. You want to skip that museum entirely and just walk? Also, done. But here's what nobody tells you about that freedom, and it is just a lot of work sometimes. So, when you travel with other people, you share the mental load. What are we eating? Which way are we walking? If you want to push on to one more thing, or if you just want to go back to the hotel, you negotiate. You hand decisions back and forth. When you're alone, every single one of those decisions is yours in the best way and the worst way possible. Psychologists call this decision fatigue, and solo travelers feel it, I would say, probably a little bit more than most. By day 3 or 4, even small choices start to feel a little bit heavier than they should. The joy of total freedom and the weight of total responsibility are actually two sides of the same coin. The fix isn't to plan every hour of your trip. It's to actually expect this and build breathing room in. Give yourself mornings with no agenda. Some afternoons just be completely unstructured. And when you just want to sit somewhere and do absolutely nothing, do it. That's not actually wasting your trip. That's part of it. Sometimes that's what you need to recharge. And if you are on this solo trip by yourself, part of that is recharging, especially if you have a full-time job or a busy life and you're working really hard. Use that time. You don't want to be go, go, go all the time. Loneliness. Because it's a little bit more nuanced than most people expect. Most first-timers brace themselves for the loneliness of being alone. But what you're not prepared for is the specific kind that actually shows up. For me, I spend a lot of time alone. I actually love my alone time. So I never truly feel loneliness, but I like being alone. And that's a really hard thing to be really explained to people, especially people that know me, some of which think that I'm such an extrovert. But let's be honest, I'm actually a bit of a recluse, hermit, introvert that has extroverted tendencies. It's more that like cities are full of people, bars and restaurants, they're very social places. You will talk to more strangers in 1 week of solo travel than in 1 month of your normal life. The loneliness that catches you is this: standing in front of something so beautiful, whether it's a view or a meal, a moment, and having no one to turn to and say, oh my gosh, are you seeing this? This is gorgeous. It's that slight nuance. On my first full day in a new place, I like to book like maybe a group day tour, or maybe the second full day, because the first day maybe I'm a little bit tired. But I love doing things like walking food tours. One of the best parts of my trip to Mexico City was actually going on a walking food tour, meeting some amazing people while being solo. Me, I personally love food tours in new cities because you get lots and lots of local knowledge, you have that company, and you eat really well. All without giving up your independence for the rest of the trip. When you go out to eat, sitting at the bar or counter, instead of a corner table, say yes to the conversation someone is clearly trying to start, because for some odd reason, there's always somebody that is starting a conversation. I love to stay home, but when I'm traveling, you will find me outside all the time. I make new friends on every single trip that I take traveling solo, and I am absolutely blessed for it. But at the same time, I'm just like, how did this introvert constantly expand her network internationally? Because when you travel by yourself, you are open in a way that you just are not when you are with a group, when you're traveling with a friend, because you lean on that other person. You don't seek any type of connection outside of the familiar. So traveling solo actually makes me far more open to being able to talk to other people. Let's talk about some of the practical stuff. And I'm going to be honest here, because I think a lot of solo travel content glosses over this. Hotel rooms cost the same, whether you are one person, two people sleeping in them. Taxis, tours, rental cars are often priced per group, not per person. Nobody is splitting the Airbnb with you. And those group discounts that make certain experiences affordable, yeah, not for you. The paella thing I told you about, for example. All of them told me paellas for a minimum of 2 people. Not because they were being difficult, not because they were being mean, but because the dish is just traditionally made in large pans meant for sharing. It made sense. It made sense to them. It made sense to me until I decided that it didn't make sense to me. It wasn't until my 4th trip to the city, after learning enough Spanish, apparently developing enough charm, but that's for somebody else to determine, that I finally convinced someone to make it work. I sat next to the water, had my paella just for me. It was worth every negotiation. It was enjoyable. The waiter was like, okay, we normally don't do this. You seem really kind. You're clearly not from here. It's a really far trip for you to take to not be able to enjoy this. And so then he obliged. Sometimes that's what it takes. It's just a little bit more pushing, but in the kindest way possible. The thing that actually helped me: when you travel alone, you also spend only what you want, what you really want. No compromising the restaurant because someone is watching their budget. You don't have to spend way more money than is your budget while you're watching your own. You don't have to split your money on an excursion that nobody actually wanted, but someone suggested. Your money goes exactly where you choose, and everything feels worth it because it is all yours. And then there's the part that everyone dreads: eating alone. I'm gonna be honest with you. I still have an aversion to this. Even in my home city, I tend to stay in. I'm not eating solo outside of my house. And I like to cook, so why would I be eating solo outside of my house? Even when I'm on business trips, if a friend is not available, nobody is in town that I can actually connect with, you will find me at the counter or ordering room service, and I will be comfortable and not leaving. I am not entirely over this, and I've been doing this for years, right? I've been traveling for work for years. I've been going on solo trips now for years, and it's still not the most comfortable thing for me. So the first time that I walked into a restaurant abroad and asked for a table for one, something in me braced. I was like, oof, maybe they pity me. I was bracing for stares, maybe for someone to come over and ask if I was waiting for someone. Here's what actually happened. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. The waiter seated me, people ate their food, everyone went around about their evening. The whole performance, the embarrassment, the self-consciousness was entirely in my own head. A few things that help. Ask for a counter seat if there is one. Go slightly off peak so the room feels less intense. Bring a book, not because you'll necessarily use it, but because having it there takes the edge off a bit. Now, some things genuinely are not set up for solo diners, and you just kind of have to come to terms with that. Korean barbecue is a good example of that. But with solo travel growing the way that it is, more and more restaurants are actually adapting, and I'm sure that there's now places where you can find your, hot pot for one or your Korean barbecue for one, as long as the restaurant themselves are obliging. Some of the best meals of my life have been eaten alone. One year, I slow traveled in Mexico City, as I mentioned before, and for my birthday, I went to Pukyal, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing incorrectly, in Mexico City. Absolutely delicious. Chef Enrique Olvera is wonderful. I sat at the bar and did the omakase taco bar experience. Just me. It was amazing. Absolutely loved it. There were so many different dishes. We were able to discuss them, so many different jokes. The couple next to me was absolutely phenomenal. They were from Colombia, and it made for such an enjoyable experience that if I was too nervous to dine by myself, I would have missed out on. Now, to this day, that birthday dinner is one of the best solo experiences of my life. Let's talk about safety. I want to talk about this properly because it's the thing that stops more people from taking their first solo trip than anything else, especially women. That fear is valid, and I also want to name this clearly. The vast majority of solo travel is safe. The travelers who feel safest are not the ones who were fearless, they're just the ones that were prepared. A few things that made the biggest practical difference for me. Arrive in daylight. Book your transport so that you know that you get to your destination before dark, especially on your first trip. Navigating an unfamiliar city at night for the first time is stressful in a way that is just completely avoidable. You don't need to deal with that type of stress. Just build your travel day so that you get there with lights still on your side. Share your itinerary. Send one person at home your accommodation names, your flight numbers, rough plan of what you'll be doing, and just check in on occasion to make sure that they know that you're alive and well. It takes like 5 minutes and, no sweat. Trust your gut though, but trust your gut without needing proof. That's one of the things that I needed to really get to. If a situation feels off, you don't need to justify leaving. You don't owe anybody any explanation. Just go. And this applies everywhere, not just when you are traveling. And write your hotel address and key numbers in a notebook. This one, please do. Because quite frankly, phones get lost, they get stolen, and they run out of battery, and the notebook does not. The goal is not to be fearless, like I said. The goal is to be prepared. For fear does not get to make your decisions. My first truly solo trip was to Barcelona. I had been to the city before, but always with other people. This trip was different. It was my first trip after my divorce. I went because I needed to know something. I needed to know if I could do it. not really the trip, but just to sit with myself and explore and be brave enough to do the things that I would normally lean on somebody else to do for me. I wanted to know, would I take the train? Could I take the train? The train was really scary to me at a time. Would I get in the taxi without panicking? Would I freeze when somebody asked me something in a language that I didn't fully speak? Could I stay in that Airbnb alone with no one to help if something actually went wrong? And honestly, the answer to all of it was yes. The scary parts and the good parts, right? Like, yes, I would panic when I got into that first taxi and he didn't speak English. And I was like, let me stumble my way through my Spanish. But guess what? We got there and we had a whole conversation in broken English and broken Spanish, which is perfect. Then one day, I think it was maybe day 3, where I sat down and I made a video for my future self. And just on my phone, because I didn't want her to forget what that felt like, what this feeling felt like, the overwhelming happiness that comes from realizing you will be just fine if you just trust yourself. And that's where I was at. That's the thing that nobody can really prepare you for. Not because it's a surprise, but because it's yours, your version of that moment in your city, on your trip. Nobody can hand it to you. You just have to go and find it. So here is what I know now that I did not know before I went. Solo travel is not a highlight reel. It is not the version you see on Instagram. It is a table for one and a bit too much time in your own head, and a specific ache of wanting to show someone something beautiful and having no one there. And what I really wish that I had known then is how incredibly solo travel would change how I see myself, how confident I become, how brave I become, how self-aware I become, how aware of my surroundings I become. It changed everything for me. And I don't think that that's something I could have ever experienced if I never decided to venture off on my own. So if you are thinking about going on your first solo trip, all I have to say is go, enjoy yourself, but go prepared, right? And be honest with yourself about what you're walking into. I have written up the full guide over at comfortscompass.com. Everything from how to budget, pick accommodation, to what to do when you're sitting at the table for one. Link is in the description. And please tell me in the comments, have you been on a solo trip? What was your solo trip? What surprised you the most? If you haven't yet, what's been holding you back? I will read every single comment, so please just let me know the things that excite you and what you're actually looking forward to, and if you are planning your first solo trip in 2026. If this was useful, please go ahead and subscribe. What I post about is travel, food, everything in between, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.